And so we've got about 12, 13 people on the call right now. And so we're just going to dive in. Susan asked me to tag team with her on the call today, and she's going to be taking notes, and we're doing the recording for people who want to watch afterwards. And this is the follow-up from the first meeting that we had. Gosh, was that 2 weeks ago now? I think.
October 19th.
Yeah. Where we had some great breakout room discussions about different topics that were of interest, and the thought that it might be useful today to sort of talk together as a group. I think we have a lot fewer people on the call than we did on that meeting. Susan, I don't even know how many people, I wasn't counting, were at that call.
Uh, it varied, but it sort of averaged around 40. So we
Yeah,
are quite a bit fewer now.
yeah. So
Part of today's meeting was with the knowledge that not everyone, it could be kind of a rotating cast of characters, that different times were good for different people.
absolutely, yeah. And what the notion for today is to sort of consolidate or solidify a little bit some of the conversations that we had at the last meeting about topics people want to talk about, the purpose and focus of this group, which is being, newly forming now, and a little bit about ways of working. Like, how does the group want to work together going forward? So so what actually, and maybe agree to some ways of working. Like, do we need working groups for different topics that, like, there's people who want to have ongoing conversations about things and then bring that back to the wider group, when we have our whole group meetings? Or do we want to do breakout groups during our meetings? Is that a useful way to work? How often do we want to meet? How do we want to structure the leadership? The initial meeting was hosted and convened by the New Hampshire Network. And so that's a question as well. Does it make sense for the group to continue to be convened under the auspices of the New Hampshire Network? What is the purpose of this group? So lots of sort of foundational questions so that we can start digging in on the meaty stuff, which is the issues that we really all want to talk to each other about and hear from each other about. So I just wanted to start with a show of hands. You can raise your hand physically or raise your hand virtually, whatever you prefer. But how many people on this call are members of energy committees? Like, that's the hat that you're wearing when you're coming to the call. So it's about the majority, it looked like. Let's see, 1, 2, 3. Keep them up, put them up again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And Katrin, where are you at? Is that you also? About half of us. Okay. A little
More
bit
than half, yeah.
Yeah, a little bit more than half of us. On the call, the last call that we had, there were people who were elected officials. There were some people representing NGOs, whether they, were members of NGOs or officially representing NGOs. So we had sort of a mix. Do we have any public officials on the call today? Great. Terry, what's your role?
I'm a county commissioner in Cheshire County.
Oh, great. Which is the county that just joined the coalition, the community power
Well,
coalition.
we were a founding member of CPC&H, but yeah, we just launched.
As a county.
Yeah, and we launched with 6 of our communities.
Got it. And Kathy, you've got your hand up. You unmute yourself.
I just had it up for the other question, so.
Got it. Okay. Got it. All right. So I thought we'd start with just a little bit of like level setting context, because I know I found myself at the last meeting going, who are we and why are we here and what are we doing? And I found it really helpful to hear a little bit of the history from Susan about the New Hampshire network, but also like the impetus behind convening this group of people to come together to talk about energy. So Susan, would you mind walking us through that a little bit?
Years ago, I was shopping for, oh my gosh, I lost a machines outside the window. I apologize. I think they're tearing up my road. 3 years ago, I was shopping around for an organization I could join to work on energy. My background is as a first grade teacher. So fortunately or unfortunately, the energy group in Durham was at a technical level that I couldn't quite follow. But then I attended a number of meetings in surrounding towns and discovered that everyone was asking the same questions, like, is plastic really a problem? How much? How many towns are doing this? What is holding up net metering? And so I suggested to friends that I had met through this wandering, why don't we try and bring our groups together, and maybe we'll find more answers when we combine our groups. And I don't know if it's good fortune, but COVID gave us Zoom, and suddenly we virtually could connect across the state. And so we're now at a little under 500 members, only on Zoom, no physical presence, no financial basis, a steering committee that more or less keeps everything running in what is now a fairly routine fashion. But that steering committee is really only about 5 or 6 of us. We have a plastic working group that is so formidable that they have been cited in places around the country and overseas for their 10 towns toolkit. And Patsy, who's on this call, is the editor and creator of much of that. And we also have a group more or less dedicated to climate policy, mostly carbon pricing, but we realized we were watching legislation, and that's a real big function of the group. And people come to us for our legislative recommendations, and we've gotten a lot of people to do actual physical testifying, going to Concord or doing it on Zoom, or by the automatic, you press the button and do it. But we realized we didn't really have an energy group. And we were sort of reorganizing this year, thinking about ways to change, and realize that there is no energy group in New Hampshire, even though there are all these energy committees. So that was the impetus for starting this group. And I emailed energy committees, I emailed our membership, and other people I randomly could think of. And so I don't know the extent to which the word's gotten out, but that's how this group happened. Today, people may be coming in and out because not everyone could make a particular hour, but between an hour and a half, we could pull more people in. And some people have said, been there, done that. So I'm not quite sure what some of the potholes on this road are that we should be avoiding. But I think so far as we can, being forward-looking, nonpartisan, in the hopes that some of our issues draw in different people than others, and we don't want anyone to feel like they would be closed out. And listen to each other, be kind, speak up, make sure that you have your say. Those are sort of my ideas of norms as well. And I think that's it, Gabrielle. Back to you.
That's lovely. And because one of the things that I wanted to have us talk about are what are some of the principles that should guide, and the listen to each other, speak up, and be kind sound like wonderful principles for any group to have.
And mute when you're not talking, especially if your road's being dug up.
With the notion that I have coming into this is that the form of the group should the form should follow the function. And so part of it is getting clear about what's the function that we want this group to serve. Is it just for energy committees? Is it for people working on energy that impacts communities specifically, or is it something else? And so getting to a little bit of clarity about, what's the purpose that kind of people are hoping or thinking that this group can usefully serve. I know when I saw the announcement as the chair of my energy committee, I was super excited and felt like this is exactly what's needed. We've been in the process of joining Community Power Coalition, and I've been excited about the coalition because it's like, oh, finally I'll get to meet some other energy committee people. But that's not really their purpose of being. It is a vehicle for meeting other energy committee people, but not all of them. Like our neighbors in Ossipee are going with a private broker. I'd be fascinated to know, what they're doing with their energy there, but that would not be the forum. So this is a better forum. But I also at the same time found it incredibly useful to have some elected officials on the last call who are like really familiar with what's going on in the legislature, familiar with what's going on at the PUC and the DES and all that kind of thing. So I feel like I'm not sure it needs to be exclusively for energy committees, and that's one of the things that I think it would be great for us to talk about. The other thing at the first meeting, we broke into, some specific topics. So one of the questions that Susan framed up is like, are those the right topics? Are those the issues that we want to talk about? And are there others? And some of them might be kind of short-term initiatives, like the climate action plan is something that's like they've got a March 1 deadline. So that's not like a standing topic that we would be talking about forever, but that's like a very short-term kind of issue. Or ensuring that the PUC does not kill NH saves. Hopefully that's like a short-term initiative that we're successful at. But we probably don't have to talk about that forever either, so there's some short-term things. And then there's maybe some other things that are just like, these are evergreen. We're always going to be interested in talking about what is happening at the legislature or with the PUC, what's on the docket, how does that affect communities, and what kind of voice can communities bring to those forums, or exchanges about what are energy committees doing, like what kinds of initiatives are groups doing around solar, or button-up workshops, or EV expos, and sort of exchanging experiences and lessons and insights around those kinds of things that we're doing to try and help our communities. So with that sort of context and grounding, I thought it would be useful to talk about, just as far as we can, like what kind of purpose people would like to or envision that this group should have in terms of whose interests are served, what kinds of actions it facilitates, what kinds of things it should link to but maybe not duplicate, and what principles should underpin it. Susan, go ahead. Are you unmuted?
There. Would you like me to put this into a table, or should this just, I can type freehand on a separate computer. So really up to you if we want to all look at a grid that I can fill out while we talk.
I think, well, I just did what you're not supposed to do, which is I asked 4 different questions at once, just to kind of throw all this stuff out there. And so I think you're going to have to do free form, but then if it starts organizing itself into a natural table, like short-term, evergreen, future, then go for it. But I think we're going to be free form for a little bit.
Okay, I'm going to give people a choice then. I will type up what people say so I don't lose it. If you want to follow, there's the address I'll be at, I hope. And but you can also enjoy each other's faces.
Yep, that works. Yeah, for some people really like following along with the notes. I know in a workshop, I like looking at the flip charts. We don't have that on Zoom, so this is sort of an alternative to flip charts. Yeah, so again, what interest should this group serve? What action should it facilitate? What things should it link to but not duplicate? And what are maybe some principles that should underpin our work together? And this one, I just unmute yourself and speak up. Go ahead. We'll use some chaos here. Or Sherry, I see your hand.
Yeah, I figured out how to raise my hand. I wasn't at the last meeting. I just heard about this morning from talking to Emily Friedrichs in Durham. And so take this all with a grain of salt because I wasn't in on your previous conversations. But I was intrigued to jump on because I'm not sure that our energy committee had heard about it. I'm all in favor of having better communication mechanisms between energy committees in different towns so that we can let each other know what we're doing and get information from each other. Within our Energy Advisory Committee, I chair the electric vehicle subcommittee. So that's my niche. And so if we continue with this group, you may not see me as the liaison with the Lebanon Energy Advisory Committee, or you may. But for instance, Lebanon last January became one of the first New Hampshire communities to adopt zoning amendments, zoning regulations requiring EV charging. And I was trying to do research to find out, do any other communities here have that? And this group would have been the perfect way to find that information. So I would throw out the idea that at each meeting, if people have something they want to share or ask about, that be put on the agenda. I don't mind having a free form part of every meeting, but it would be good to have some kind of agenda too. So we know if it's going to be a push for us to attend, is it a priority or not a priority that month or whatever?
That's awesome. Thank you, Sherry. Bruce and then Terry.
My interest is in electric vehicles because I own a Tesla, but I also want to know, in Bedford, there was a push to have a service EV location. And I just wonder how that's coming from a permitting standpoint.
All right, interest in EVs, curious to hear about progress in other towns. Terry, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I have to agree with Sherry. I think I've been on other task force with different subjects, and I recognize here that there are several different stakeholders groups that are working on separate things, with energy in mind, and having an opportunity for all of these different for the rest of us to not only get new ideas, but to not duplicate things that are already happening. So I think that, having something like this would be a valuable tool for all of us.
So echoing the emphasis on exchange across energy committees. I keep freezing and you guys have frozen for me. So there you are again. John?
Yeah.
I think you've got your, Stevens, you got your hand up?
Sure. At first I had that hand up, but then I realized that there's the other one. Yeah. Just wanted to pass on from experience. I had started out with the Central New Hampshire Regional Planning Commission, which held meetings that drew energy committee people, and then also experts in certain fields and whatnot, and that really worked out very, very well. It was not broken up into separate work groups. We were all in the same place at the same time, which made it easier to follow the mission of the group, you know. And then the lady at the Central New Hampshire Regional Planning Commission who was running that, her husband got reassigned to North Carolina, so she moved away. And that one stopped, and then I got involved with the local energy solutions group, and that was very good. Except it also focused like its main focus turned more and more towards legislation, which kind of made it less nuts and bolts local interest, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just my input.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you. That's really helpful. Bill.
And I apologize for joining late, but I was in another meeting, and that's the way life goes these days. Yeah, I love what the New Hampshire Network is trying to do, but we really need to try and find a way to make something that will succeed long term. And I know there's been a lot of discussion about legislation, and yet there's a whole group in the network that works legislation, or did. And so I'd like not to venture into that specifically, except to maybe advise them. But I think for me, I think one thing that would be very useful, I love the idea of developing some intercommunication between conservation energy commissions. And I think that for me, what I'd most like to see is what the Venn diagram, where we're overlapping, where we have common interests that we can build upon and share knowledge between commissions and committees to strengthen our work statewide, find out where weaknesses and we perceive and what we're authorized to do under the state laws or capable of doing under state laws, those sort of things, as well as just local actions. I think that might be useful. So if we spent, the first few meetings just kind of finding commonalities were, then maybe we could talk about how best that we could follow up communicating on. It might not be routine Zoom meetings, but maybe it's listservs or some other, social media tool that we could utilize to strengthen all this work that we're doing.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And I know one of the things Susan has offered to do is to create a Google group, which I believe she already has, with everybody who wants to be on it, just specifically with this focus on energy committees. So that's certainly something that is happening. And I take your point that, maybe this isn't something that's like a regular monthly call. And I think we're taking a little bit of the approach of, let's see how this goes for 6 months and how it evolves and what needs are identified and where the energy takes us, so to speak, no pun intended. So
just to follow up on that,
yeah.
I don't think a monthly call right now is a bad idea at all, because we're trying to, run around figuring out where we, what the interests are and what those commonalities are. And so I think that this is a good time to be having general meetings.
Noted. Thank you. Thank you, Bill.
Hey, Bill.
Yeah, Paul.
Paul, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, Bill, you mentioned legislative group of some kind that's working on energy policy. Could you elaborate a little bit and let me know, what is that?
So Susan might be best known. Susan,
Let me talk to that. So Joe Kwasnick pretty much was a one-man does it all guy. And he followed all the legislation, talked to many legislators, even helped to craft bills, gave testimony, and not surprisingly, he's backed off a little to enjoy life. So the network decided to regroup, asking each of the working groups, which are otherwise climate and plastics, to come up with their own legislative agenda. You know, talk to who are the legislators working on waste, air, DES, plastics, follow the legislation, input it into our spreadsheet, make to the general membership of 470. We never had a group explicitly called energy. That was just Joe's interest. But so, oh dear, that is part of what we're hoping this group will do. And then
Yes.
Yeah.
energy
Susan, I can help you with your
legislation is
voice a little bit. And so we had a legislative working group, but as Susan said, Joe was the one that went through all the bills, and he was interested in energy. So most of the bills that the network has been recommending and following in the last 2 years have been energy related. The climate working group was forming, and we added some suggestions to his list also. But without Joe, we're hoping that each working group in the network will have 1 or 2 people who will make relationships with state legislators or go through the list and pull out bills of interest that can be added to our tracking list, so that then we can send out weekly updates while hearings are being held January through May, recommending that people show up to testify or do online testimony. And we've had a great impact in the past on bills, and we want to maintain that. We just might not have as many bills as Joe was able to track when he was doing that pretty much full time.
And Sherry, thank you, John. Sherry asks a question in chat, like, how does this all intersect with the work of Clean Energy New Hampshire, which also tracks legislation? John, are you able to field that, or Susan?
well, I was going to just say that we're sort of hoping to theirs. We don't always agree because they have stakeholders that are more all over the political spectrum, and we do not agree, but we may need to rely on them because they have expertise that we do not have.
Yeah, I think that would be an input. One of the problems that the climate working group had with the Clean Energy's recommendations were, for some reason, Clean Energy New Hampshire is not making a stand on carbon pricing and stay away from carbon pricing bills. There was a couple important bills last session, a bill to commission a study on the impacts on New Hampshire of carbon fee and dividend. And Clean Energy New Hampshire was neutral on that. There was no reason not to support that other than they didn't want to, or I perceive that they didn't want to offend any of their member organizations. They have, Eversource and Liberty Utilities and Unitil and other providers that really don't want to talk about carbon pricing for business reasons.
Got it. Thank you. Any other comments on this question specifically right now? I want to let that conversation flow, but if not, I will jump over to Kathy.
Yeah.
Go
Before
ahead,
we go,
Paul.
on this issue of legislation and sort of, the direction, it seems to me that that having a consensus in this group, I perceive this group as representative of energy groups, and some of these town energy groups or small energy committees. Someone's already pointed out the fact that we don't talk much. There is no working group for me to interact with, to discuss with other energy groups in towns in New Hampshire policy. Having said that, if we could agree on a common set of policy that we would agree upon, that could be a foundation for then getting it moved to representation. Now, whether Clean Energy New Hampshire represents that interest or we select somebody to represent our interest, but what I want to avoid is each one of us having to individually go to Concord and try to weigh in on legislation that we may or may not be in position to effectively communicate due to time or knowledge. So the opportunity to use this forum as a way to aggregate common policy approaches to me makes perfect sense, as well as just communicate. You know, what is the town of Center Harbor doing on energy policy this year? Just communicate. A couple times at the Clean Energy New Hampshire, the LES forum, I didn't go to LES yesterday, I had a conflict, but at the LES sessions in prior years, they've had breakout sessions where local energy committees would get together and talk. That seems to have gone away. I didn't see it in the agenda yesterday.
There was
And
one.
there was one?
Yeah. But it was more of a panel presentation, not an exchange amongst multiple. I mean, the Q&A was actually quite good, but for that reason, I think there's a pent up desire for it. Yeah.
Well, what Paul said was why I backed out of the LES thing. You know that area because there was it started out where different towns could come in and tell what they have learned and ask questions and learn more and whatnot. But then it steered more towards legislation and whatnot. So I had found the earlier approach to be much more handy in learning what other towns are doing, things we would have never thought of, perhaps even, you know.
Right, sharing of best practices.
Sharing, that's the great word. Thank you.
And I'm
Yep.
just going to take moderator's prerogative and put myself in this conversation before passing it on to Kathy. And just to say that I think there are some policy issues that we're likely to all be in alignment on, and there may be others where we're not going to agree or don't find those things to be a priority for us particularly. So I think we're going to need to navigate that with a little bit of care. I was an advocate for many years on carbon pricing, and I'm not today, and that's not where I want to put my energy. I think it's fine that other people do that, but that's not where I want to put my energy. So I'm excited about working on energy policy outside of carbon pricing. So just my 2 cents on that.
Can I add that for a second?
Yes.
One model, and again, we may feel our way to the model that works best for this group, but you know, I like the information sharing and strategy sharing and experience sharing. If an issue comes up, like say carbon pricing, and we want to, some of the groups in this group want to weigh in on that in the legislature, it doesn't have to be a unanimous thing. I mean, there are other organizations in the past that I've studied and been part of where, you know, say 3 of the representatives here say, we want to take this position on carbon pricing. Who's in? And then let's say 2/3 of these groups say I'm in, then you can send a letter listing those groups who are part of this group. You know, it doesn't have to be the whole group, but each time we take a position, you list the individual committees that are part of it. See what I'm saying? So I just wanted to toss that out as one of the strategies.
Love it. Super helpful.
If I could just do one follow-up, this is Bill again. I get what the point I was trying to get at earlier was, I think the strength, you know, particularly in trying to influence legislation is frequently in the numbers. And if, you know, you work on building the strength of this organization first by finding those commonalities and having value to each other, then if we spoke as an organization, it would have more power with the legislation. So
Yeah.
instead of trying to find the fights to fight now, let's find the strength to win fights in the future.
Yeah, I would agree.
I see thumbs up on that one. Thank you, Bill. All right, I'm going to move us to Kathy's point, and if we can still come back to this after, just
Well, I think I still have our basic question that I'll be commenting on is what would we each like to see this group focus on? And I actually went to my 4th year at the LES conference yesterday, and I found it just as valuable as I have every other year. And what I find is there's so much we can do as energy committees, and it really helps me prioritize when I go to that conference, but it also makes me realize how fast things are changing. We've got the IRA now. There's still so much to learn about that and things we can't learn yet because they haven't made decisions. But I really feel it is valuable to meet as a group on different pieces that I hate to invent the wheel. And this year, proposals, and we ended up having to go through 3 different ones to finally get it the way it needed to be sent out. And it would have been very valuable to perhaps share with towns. Then we had to find a memorandum of understanding because we have to engage the person who wins the bid to hold off until town meeting in March. So there's a lot of things that we could have used the advice of other energy committees on. I know yesterday I was trying to find out about community power, and when you're New Hampshire Electric Co-op members, it's a little bit different. There are some twists on how things work with community power, but there wasn't anyone there at their booth that could answer the question. Now I can call and speak to Henry and get the details, but maybe it would be nice to invite every once in a while somebody that might have answers like Henry on community power, and we would know that ahead of time. So if that's something we were interested in and it was on the agenda, that he would be here for 20 minutes of the meeting, or if you want to know about carbon pricing, maybe John would come and talk about that. And so I really would like to be able to spend most of my time sharing the work that we're all doing on energy in our towns.
thank you.
Yes, I would agree. And I'm sorry that I could have helped you with the RFP, and I could have helped you with the MOU, and I could have helped you with PPA, because we just went through it in Bristol. So again, reinventing the wheel, or trying to prevent from reinventing the wheel, is something that I really would like to do.
Excellent. I think we've got that strong message coming through. Susan, and you're on mute.
So just to clarify, in bringing this group together, I think we really have 2 very strong needs that I'm hearing everyone say again today, and they're not competing. It's not legislation or nuts and bolts, that I think we really are doing or have the capacity of both functions, that we are a place that people can learn how to do this and learn more about things, but we're also the way not just to know about the legislation, but among ourselves to say, here are the talking points, who can go to Concord this month, do we have other channels besides just the legislation, the remote control thing, but that's good too. But those seem to me like the 2 buckets of advocacy, that together we have that voice. I think the letter of 12 of New Hampshire's 13 cities, their mayors saying, we need net metering now. I think that helped to bring us to net metering. That was combined voices, and we have the same power with the energy committees of, you know, oh my God, how many towns? And right now what people are saying, you know, if I wish I had known this, I see that Sherry said we could set up a repository of templates. That's brilliant. But also the email list that I put together, if it's okay with everyone that I share, then any of you can post anything anytime. You know, hey, who knows this? And 12 people can write back. Is, I guess, quick show of thumbs up. Is that okay if I share everyone's email and we turn ourselves into a big listserv? Anyone holler if you object?
Can I object just because if you're talking about sharing a big, long list of emails, I think that's really inefficient because it changes. If there's a listserv or a Google group, like someone mentioned, I'm all for that.
Oh, I think that's what I meant.
Okay, just clarifying.
Okay, yeah, I mean, but anytime you want, you would send an email to it and everyone would read it. And if everyone, you know, good job, thanks, wow, don't email everyone with those comments, but with real information, do.
Yeah, Susan, so we did start setting up that Google group, and anybody who
Yep.
wants to be on it, let Susan know and she'll add you. The group. Uh, So you can keep tabs on what's going on, but you don't have to constantly get every email as it happens.
And I apologize because my internet connection is cutting in and out. But I am put a reminder that if you aren't, or if you don't know, if Susan's gotten your name to be on the Google group, you could go ahead and put your name and email address in the chat and she'll be sure that it makes it to it. John Condos from Clean Energy New Hampshire. You're on deck.
I mean, I think, first of all, I'm not here to defend Clean Energy New Hampshire. I don't want to get into the policy part. I think this group's biggest power, in my opinion, and here's the thing: I work with energy committees and committees in the southwest corner of New Hampshire. Katrin does it in the Seacoast. We have a North Country one, and we're looking to hire one in Sullivan County. And the ECR's role is to support energy committees and provide things like RFP templates, et cetera, et cetera. And we've just developed a funding resource for our members. So, you know, there's some of the work that you might want to do in that department. Periodically, we could, you know, share, or the energy committees can do it. I think the sharing of information by energy committees is a powerful opportunity for you. The legislative part, you know, again, you may not agree with CNH doesn't take a position, and anyone in this call doesn't know that I've been advocating for carbon pricing since before I discovered CCL now knows it. So whether I work there or have an influence on what CNH says about carbon pricing, that's a decision the organization makes for a variety of reasons. It's broader than what you implied, John. But CNH has a full-time person working the legislator day in and day out. That's what he does. The executive director is very involved, and even another gentleman who works primarily with the PUC is involved. So in terms of keeping track of what's going on in New Hampshire, in Concord, and it's really hard to beat what CNH can offer. And then you all decide what to do with it. You like one bill, whether CNH's position is what you like or not, doesn't matter. They can inform you on what's going on. And I think that is going to save you a lot of time. And, you know, maybe Joe wants to duplicate all of that and do it all himself, or you could save some time and energy and then look at where your power is really in influencing a bill. And Lord knows when, you know, you all, and I say we, really, I'm part of this in that sense, get out there and make our voices heard. It does have an impact. Sometimes it doesn't feel like it, but it's going to build. And, you know, so I think that's the power of this group. And as far as this committee, I think, you know, sharing energy committee stories and what you're doing, that's great. Whether you want somebody from CNH to, you know, help with some of the different issues. I mean, my specialties are energy efficiency, photovoltaics, and energy and electric vehicles. I've done projects in all of those, actually physical, finished projects. So I'm a guy that wants to get stuff done. I'm not real good at this part, the talking. So it's real hard for me to participate in these kinds of things because, I want to help, but I also just can't sit and listen to people talk about the same thing over and over again. I want to get a project done. So I'm going to help you, but I'm not sure that I can, and it's a good use of anybody's time for me to sit and listen to all of these, but I'm here to help you when you need it and can answer some of your questions. And if you're in the southwest corner of the state, as Terry Clark knows, I'm here to help, and I work with Terry on that community power thing every chance I get because I want to see it happen. And so, yeah, I don't know why sorry if I talk too long.
Thanks, John. Yeah, and I can imagine, following up on Kathy Thorndike's suggestion to have people come in from time to time and talk about specific issues. Like we could have Clean Energy New Hampshire come in and talk about, a legislative roundup a couple times during the session to, help guide people. Or we could do office visits with the CENH circuit riders and do breakout groups that way, and it would actually enable the circuit riders to have a much broader reach than what you're able to have right now. I know we found our circuit rider invaluable to us, and Tamworth continues to be. So Paul Panish from Barrington.
Yeah, thanks. My apologies for getting in late. I was working on some farm equipment and could not get away. I'm with the Energy Committee in Barrington. I think we're mostly with energy committees here, as I understand it.
About 60%.
I envisioned this group as being something that would be for an exchange of information. I think advocacy is fine, but what I really need is information so that I can form an opinion. And I have to take into account what I feel the town's position would be on some of these issues as well. And there's going to be a diversity of opinion. I think the carbon pricing is a good example. There are different approaches to take on carbon pricing. We may not be unanimous. I'm not sure that I want to see this be an advocacy group. I think it's fine if a group of people get together and decide they have the same opinion on a given piece of legislation or an issue and want to represent themselves that way. But I don't see that as being the primary purpose of the group. It really, for me, would be to educate myself so that I can make an educated decision or take a position on a given issue. So that's really how I would like to see this. And also just to get advice. I mean, a good example is we had our first public hearing yesterday evening for the community power in Barrington. I had one person attend, and this was, we have no budget. I could not do a mailing to the town. I did spend many hours at the transfer station handing out flyers. We have some information on the town website, on our own energy committee website. My question there was, how did people get the word out? What did you expect and what did you actually get at these public hearings? Do you have public hearings where you have good attendance? Should I be happy that I had even one person? I don't know. But that's my 2 cents anyway.
Thank you, Paul. That was great. Bill Coder from Bedford.
Yeah, on the advocacy or policy area, it just feels to me like that should be a broader, if this group decides to take it on, there's more than just the legislature. There's, for what it's worth, the last meeting breakout session we had, an individual who was on the PUC said he felt like there were opportunities at the PUC that exceeded what the current perspective is for legislative action. So
Mhm.
Rather than calling something legislative, I would suggest calling a policy. And that can encompass going to these DES, hopefully DES that's forming the climate action plan, going to the Department of Energy if there exists any kind of pathway there, and just lump it into policy.
Excellent. And I think at the first meeting, that was definitely the message that came out of the breakout group that had focused on, and it explicitly was legislation and policy. And people made the point numerous times that PUC, DES, multiple other entities are, if not in some cases more important than the legislature. So that point well taken. Thank you, Bill. Let's see. Did we just lose John Gage? Oh, no, there you are.
No, I hit lower hand before you called me,
Okay,
sorry.
all right. Since we've been picking on carbon pricing, I feel badly for having raised that example. But
No, not at all. I'm in complete agreement with the group. I think this collaborating, I'm on the Wyndham Local Energy Committee, and we're just in the dark about what others are doing. I've gone to a couple other energy committee meetings to try to learn what's going on. So I think that's a huge power of this organization. I just think there's going to be a couple bills this year that will really help towns, or maybe some that will really hurt towns. And we should also use this Google group as a way to communicate things that are of interest. So we don't have to all agree on any particular bill. I think it's a good idea to let every energy committee know when there's a bill that they might care about, so that they could submit even a written testimony online is pretty easy and quick to do. So I think that's just one small component of what we can do together.
thank you, John. Susan, and I just want to say before you start talking, Susan, if there are folks who've been sort of quiet because we've all been rather chatty, don't be shy. Go ahead and put your hand up, because we want to hear from everybody. Go ahead, Susan.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a piece of information. I don't know if Chris Skoglund's going to be here today. He thought he would, but I talked to him yesterday and about the climate action plan, what he could tell us. And he said that on the whole, they're keeping it relatively quiet because maybe the executive council doesn't realize that they've allowed it to happen and what it could mean for it to happen. And essentially the document they write will sort of be a foot in the door. So it won't be perfect at all, but it's an opportunity to get the money that then towns, municipalities can say, this is what I would like to do with it. And that is part of the refinement process. There will be opportunities to weigh in, though. That will happen. But I didn't want to drop the ball on that. And I wanted to make sure you knew that, but don't say it loudly. And I'm wondering also at some point, because we've been on for an hour, we've only got half an hour to go, if there's some way to talk about what is the next step. We've got a nice long list of things we want to do. So I'm not sure that one has to, exceed the other, and that we can have subgroups for people that want to work on something, or a number of people that could be signatories to something and others not. We don't all have to be in lockstep. Okay, that's it for me.
No, that's awesome. And thank you, Susan. That's a perfect tag team role play there, because we really should shift over to talk about structure and how we want to organize ourselves. I think we've got real clarity on purpose. So, we've identified a number of topics that people are interested in. I don't think we need to spend a whole lot of time on that today. those will continue to evolve and we can refine them and as we go and, you know, work on the agenda and bringing in special topics where there's interest and creating space for exchanges, which is obviously like a really critical one. But the question that we wanted to, you know, figure out is, you know, what are some good ways of working? The New Hampshire Network has suggested or requested that there be maybe a leadership team of 3 or 5 people who are willing to sort of shepherd this group for the first 6 months, maybe in kind of rotating chairs or as a, you know, small group that helps put the agenda together and make sure that, you know, we're on track, so that it doesn't fall to just one person. And so, you know, other questions are, you know, how frequently should we meet? Are there specific working groups that people know that they think that they would like to get together on, or discussion topics? Do people like open discussion meetings? I've heard one person say they like that versus having breakout groups. So those are, again, and I see the thumbs up, thank you on that. Like, we like to all talk to each other, and that's usually what people say when you're facilitating, even in very large groups, interestingly. I want to hear what everybody has to say. So, but anyway, again, I've tossed out a couple questions just there. So what are people's thoughts on the structure? How frequently? Rotating leadership? Are there people who feel that they would be excited about being part of a small leadership team to share the chair responsibility at the meetings?
So let me go after frequency first. Once a month is probably a lot. It's probably a lot. I already have Energy Committee once a month and ASHRAE once a month and everything once a month. Once a month is a lot. But every other month or quarterly, the opportunity to find out what other towns are doing is something that I'm both interested in and probably willing to chair that discussion. But it doesn't always have to be just a meeting either. I mean, what other towns are doing feels like it could be summarized in a document, you know, of some kind, an online document where you could just make quick notes about what various towns are doing. And even contact people, the contact for a town, so I can send an email to someone from a different town and say, hey, I see that you're doing this as well. You know, we've already done that. So here's the RFP we used, and here's the you know, agreement we used, whatever. Here's the stuff I have.
Great, thank you, Paul. And Kathy, I see your hand up.
Yes, I was thinking that if we had specific topics ahead of time, for example, I see there's a few people on here that are brand new energy committees, and perhaps that could be one of the items, would be from 3 to 3:30, we will talk about new energy committees, from having people that are experienced and then people that are new on the call together. And that way, if that was something you weren't interested in, you'd have the option of not. Because I think once a month would be fine. But it would be nice if it was going to be all legislative and I chose not to participate because that wasn't my focus. I would know ahead of time. And I wouldn't mind starting out being a co-chair. Because again, I'm not quite sure. We're still working on how this is going to be organized, but I would be willing to co-chair with another person.
Thank you, Kathy. Any thoughts on the frequency? Susan, are you talking? And then I see you, Bruce. Susan, were you talking just then? I can unmute you.
Okay, I didn't see because I was typing. I know that you have a poll hidden somewhere on that very topic if you want to pull it out and get a definitive answer among those who are here.
Hey, let me see. How do I find the polls? I see breakout.
I've got the little 3 dots is where you find all the sundry stuff.
Invite. link.
Where you get a couple bananas?
I'm not
Yeah.
seeing polls. Sorry.
Okay, do you see next to end, there are 3 horizontal dots? And
Yes.
it says more.
Yep.
So hit that and
Yeah.
polls about halfway through that list.
I see pause recording, stop recording, summary, AI, companion, raise hand, play chimes, breakout rooms, chat.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe I have different ones than you.
Have it. You may
No
have it
polls.
on your
Okay,
computer.
never mind. Okay, never mind.
Do you
I
want-
don't meeting. So everyone that would prefer every 2 weeks, right? The choices are every 2 weeks, every month, or quarterly that we convene in this structure. Subgroups might meet more often. So for a meeting every 2 weeks of this entity, any hands raised? I think I saw one.
One hand.
Okay. Once a month. I can't see everyone. But anyone able to count? Mary Beth, you're quiet.
10, I'm getting 10, 11 hands, 10 or 11 of the,
Once a month? Okay, and every other month. So
Every other month, my hand's up. I can't seem to find the little
Sure.
hand thing.
every other month, so
This is my hand.
that's 3.
so maybe once a month on a particular topic, and then every other month on a more varied and deeper agenda with more participation in all the topics people want. Would that solve it?
Yeah, that might do it.
Okay, so that, that once a month might be newbies to community energy and ECs, and then what's up with legislation the next meeting, and everybody else's odds and ends. But that's for the leadership committee to resolve.
I think that sounds like a good plan. And we're in a trial period. We're going to see how it goes and keep adjusting as we need.
And Susan, in the chat, there's a request for your email address if that's the appropriate procedure to get added onto the Google group.
Yes, it is, but
Do you mind
and
if
I
I
need
paste
your-
it in there?
absolutely. No, I do not mind. Please do it. And I didn't know if you had the link for how to get to the Google group, but I'll send it to everyone later.
Yeah, I did put that in chat.
Okay.
And then I'm
Yeah.
going to put in the
Already there.
chat again, something that Susan put in at the start. That has a link to indicate what days of the week are particularly good on, any given week, so that we could pick some times that seem to work best for everybody. Some groups will sort of vary their times because no time is going to be perfect for everyone. So we'll try and find a time that's good.
Oh, and let me say a word about that when to meet, it's giving specific dates. Ignore the specific dates and just treat it as if it were a Monday, a Wednesday, a Tuesday, what would be the time that would or wouldn't work for you? And then we'll apply it to wherever we are on the calendar.
Sounds good. Susan, I feel as though we've kind of covered what we wanted to cover. Is there anything else that we should cover?
It's up to people if they would like to do a topic. I have breakout rooms set up, but we've been on this for an hour and a quarter, and maybe maybe it's wise to just say good enough for today. I'm seeing
Yeah,
a
I
lot of
guess-
heads nod.
Unless there's any urgent thing that people want to say. I know that the NH Saves is being considered at the PUC as we speak, and we got quite an urgent request to weigh in on that. And if you need any guidance or help in how to do that, the Clean Energy New Hampshire, I think it's Chris Skoglund, can give you information on how to, like, who to email and how to structure email, because they're very particular about including the docket number and things like that.
So just a quick question on that one. How did you know that?
How did I know that? I think it was put through on the New Hampshire network at one point, and then I think I also had connected with Chris Skoglund earlier on. Bye, John. Thank you.
I mean,
And-
this is a point right here that I'm the energy committee chair in the town of Bristol. I had no idea that that was an issue. I don't hear from Chris Coughlin at all. The communication is to black hole as far as I'm concerned in terms of communicating with him. And I'm sure that's not by intent. It's by lack of organization somewhere. I mean, Clean Energy New Hampshire, does he have a newsletter that he goes out with? Does he have regular communications that he does?
I believe there are periodic communications, but I mean, I think this is just pointing up the need for our group, you
Have
know.
to be a member. Don't you have to be a member, John Condos?
We do.
I'm a member.
You can sign up for the newsletters, and there are general newsletters that go out. Chris does specific ones for actions and often favors members. And if you want to get on that, just, make an effort to touch. I mean, he'll send you information. The power of this group is when there's a need to do something at the PUC, Chris is the guy who knows what needs to be done, and he can send it out. Whether you want to do anything about it or not, that's your choice. But the value that CNH offers in this realm is sometimes the approach is well thought through, like the message should be blank, as opposed to just throwing whatever, you feel like at the PUC. And that's an important consideration that Chris spends an awful lot of time trying to understand. So his insights are very valuable to you, and I really recommend you just reach out to him. And this network is networked in. I mean, Chris has attended, and if you want regular updates from him on legislation, he's really the PUC. Actually, Nick Hall does legislation. But the point is that we can help you with that, so you don't have to do the research. You then decide what you're going to do. I mean, we're not going to tell you what to do. That was the whole point of that carbon pricing thing. I mean, we're not going to. Some positions we may not agree on, but at the end of the day, we'll be watching the bills that matter, that we think matter to clean energy, and just want everyone to be aware of it. So we're really just trying to inform and educate.
Gabrielle, can you post right now where we go in Clean Energy New Hampshire to get that information? Or John, do you know that?
Well, someone just put Chris's email in there in the chat. I mean, it's Chris at cleanenergynh.org, and explain you'd like to get information on. He's going to be primarily focused on the PUC, but you want legislative updates and other things, and he'll pass that along.
But there's nowhere right this minute about the PUC.
There's no PUC place. No, I mean,
Okay. I have it in my email from Don Crease. I'll look for what I have. I'll email it to you guys.
Well, Don has another perspective on it, of course.
Yeah.
It's another resource. I mean,
Well, no, I just have the number, the official numbers you're supposed to put in for which case it is.
The docket.
Yeah, the docket. I don't have talking points. And it was sent out to network email, but it gets buried.
And also in the notes from the first meeting, there, Susan, you have some pretty detailed information in here
Right.
about it,
Right.
Along with the PUC email and the docket number. So that's a good start. I have found it helpful to have sample letters in the past when I've written in just like a couple talking points or ideas of how to structure a letter. And then I go and, customize it, obviously, because I'm sending it, but Chris can often help with that. So very good. And I guess once we get our lovely listserv up and running, then this would be the kind of thing that if somebody heard about, hey, there's this thing going on and the comment period's ending, here's the address, here's the issue, this is why it matters to community energy committees, you could send that message to everybody on the list, and then we'd all be informed. So that, I think that's a great service that this gathering that can provide to each other.
And if you want right now, I mean, yes, absolutely, I agree with you, Gabrielle. If you want right now to get that information from Don, that Don Cree sent, the email that has this Zoom link also has a link to the last minutes, and I put Don's information in the chat, so it's near the bottom, and it should stand out in blue because it's clickable, I believe, I hope.
And I've
Oh,
just
better.
cut and pasted the bit of the notes that are relevant to this from our last meeting.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah. And somehow it's not coming out highlighted in blue, but you can cut and paste that, and there's the PUC email address. Any last words from anybody? This has been really, really helpful, and thank you for sticking around for an hour and almost a half. And I really apologize for having my camera off most of the time, but everybody kept freezing, so I knew that meant that I was freezing, so. All right, well, thank you. Have a great afternoon and a great weekend. Great to see so many familiar faces. Bye-bye.
Thank you for doing this.
Susan,
Thank
do you
you.
want to stay on for 2 seconds? Bye,
Yeah,
John.
sure.
Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, everyone. So, Paul, did you have, oh, gone.
Oh,
I
there he
didn't know if you had
goes.
something to say.
Bruce, you were first to arrive and you're going to be last to leave.
We must be very entertaining.
All right. So what do you think? I thought it went well.
I think that's what they came for, and they got to do what they needed. Uh-oh, people are coming on now.
Oh no, did she have
Oh,
the-
no.
Was she on before? I don't
Hi.
recognize the name.
No, I don't think so. Hi, Sandra. We just left. But there'll be a remote and there'll be minutes. We kind of finished what we needed to do.
Make sure her audio is still connecting, because those 3 dots are
Oh, okay.
yeah. Okay. But so how did the note taking go? Hi, Sandra.
Well, I was trying to do a cut and paste, and
Hi. That's
hi,
it.
and I got really messy stuff pasted in, and so I hope I wasn't driving people crazy with things jumping all around.
We'll get the chat, because I'll get a recording of the entire chat, so I can send that to you. Oh, there she goes. And and then yeah, and it's good because I couldn't keep track of the chat the whole time, you know, so there's stuff that's in there that I think will be useful to include and weave into the conversations. I did take some handwritten notes, so if you want to send the draft and I'll give it a look over just before we send it out. I know you're really fast with those, amazingly fast.
Oh, Cindy Heath is a hard act to follow. She's
that
got
right?
like, yeah, like within an hour.
Ah!
I usually need to take a nap.
And
Yeah.
I'll get the recording and send it to you. And now I'm realizing we got 3 volunteers.
Oh, is the recording? Did you turn the recording off?
I did. Oh,
Oh,
it's still
okay.
recording right now. I need to turn it off.